unless they get some feeling that the players all of a sudden, against everything they've historically stood for, want a cap. You're looking at a very long work stoppage. The game.
Here we go. Evan Drellick joining us right now, writer for The Athletic. And Evan, you're giving us a little outside.
I love it.
Outside.
I'm on the street in Manhattan. Yeah. I've never done a hit that would be crazier looking, but I hope it's good enough for you guys.
Yes. Yeah, so far, so good. It looks really nice. We get to see everybody doing their last minute Christmas shopping. So if there's panicked faces behind Evan, it's not because they're hearing him talk about the next collective bargaining agreement and his latest article about if there could be a fight over a salary cap. Here it is, the big question looming over MLB. Will owners take up the fight for a salary cap? This is a good stuff. When I see these articles come out from Evan, it's the first thing I get excited, get a little breakfast or lunch and just sit back, watch this or read this article. So we're not going to get to everything. So I encourage everyone to check it out. But Evan, let's just start with this percentage chance that you think this becomes a legit fight next time around. Obviously, they can spend some time on it, but it just seems like both sides, are so firm on not giving up a floor, not giving up a cap. And I saw your Tony Clark quote in there from 2023, which reminded everyone that there's no chance, at least in his mind, that they're going to give that up in any way.
My personal opinion, sitting here today, is that it will not be worth the amount of pain that would be required to get to a cap. I think the decision the owners have to make is basically, are you willing to wait out a year? Unless they get some feeling that the players all of a sudden, against everything they've historically stood for, want a cap. You're looking at a very long work stoppage. The game is actually in a better place than it's been in recent years. The pitch clock's had good effects. The industry revenues are around $12 billion this year. 2 years from now, maybe it's climbing up toward $13 billion. They more or less split that amongst themselves. It's just so much money you'd have to walk away from to get to that system the owners want that I can't really see it as a rational decision. That said, that doesn't mean they wouldn't do it. That doesn't mean they wouldn't look around. We have some new owners and go, you know what? We can win this fight. We can do the thing that the other owners never were able to do. So that's what. Sorry, I got to move. It seems unlikely to me, but who knows, right? Who knows how they're feeling?
So here's my question. It's all salary cap seems to come up all the time, and owners and they have these conversations. One, I don't think it'll ever happen. Two, when Manfred makes up a rule, per se, like the pitch clock. The players and the union come up and say, we don't want to do it. Then next year they can just implement it, right? And isn't that how that always has happened with these owners and stuff? But they cannot do it with salary cap. Is that what we're talking about here? So I'm on the same page. They cannot, right?
Yeah. This is a collectively bargained matter. I mean, anything related to economics in the sport, they have to agree on. That's the CBA bargaining every 5 years. And so, one of the topics is revenue sharing, and the reason. One of the reasons the owners would want a cap here is because Manfred wants to change the way revenues are shared to change TV rights. We've got everything going on with the RSNs and Diamond Sports bankruptcy. He wants the league office to take control. He wants the local TV money to be shared equally amongst all the teams. That's not something every team, particularly the big market teams, are going to want to do. So what do you give your big market teams and get everybody on board with? Hey, we'll give you a cap. And even besides that, look, the owners have always wanted it. It's a limit on spending. It's cost control. The other sports leagues have it. But yeah, at the end of the day, this is not something they could in any way do on their own. The only little caveat there is there's some technical stuff in labor law where if you're bargaining and you get to impasse, management has a legal right to try to implement what it wants. They tried to do that in 1994, the 95 strike. Did not work. So no, the short answer is no, they can't do it on their own.
All right. Well, then I need to do something that I would never do when I was part of the Players Association. Let's say a salary cap is instituted. You can't get one thing without giving up something else. And the players are so against it. Would we see something implemented like you're a free agent in 3 years instead of 6 years if there's a salary cap? Because the owners have to give something monumental and huge to the players for them to even take a shred of thought about this.
Yeah, I mean, look, things that the players have wanted, getting arbitration early or getting to free agency earlier does become easier in that context. But the belief over at the union and amongst players historically is that even if at the start of a cap system, you are getting things that are better than what you had before. You formally split revenues in a cap system, right? The players get, let's say, 55% or 52%. The number you start out with could be very good. What then happens over time, and if you look back at lockouts in the other sports, this has been a large part of the fights they've had, is that you fight over the percentage. So if you start at 52, well, the next time around, the owners are going to say, you know what, we really think you should be at 50. And the next time around, it's at 48. And there's all sorts of other things that go with it. Money has to go into escrow. If the league has a real downturn, contracts in baseball are guaranteed. If you go into that system where you're tying salaries to revenues, the changes in baseball. I don't know if it's right to say it totally goes away, but you're not guaranteed that number. It's dependent upon what actually goes on in the sport in a given year. So yes, there are things that you could do with the system that you couldn't do otherwise, but it's still not something the players historically have wanted.
Okay, so can you still hear us, Evan, or maybe we're
I got you guys.
He does. His screen froze for a sec. We'll see if it comes back. But you can go ahead, Kratz. You can ask the question.
Also, ask. We got good audio. The audio is good.
Yeah, good.
Is there a chance that the owners open their books then? Like, would that change because it would be a cap system that they would actually open their books, or is that the one thing that owners is always completely off the table?
So this is somebody's got a leaf blower above me. If you see some leaves falling, this is a misconception. I saw a commenter on the story I did today asking about this. The league has to provide pretty detailed financial information to the union right now. The reason we don't hear about it is because it has to be kept confidential. But it's not as though the way these teams are operating are totally in the dark from the union. The union lawyers, and I guess by extension players, if they were to ask, do have access to the books. Now, could there be more information that you would glean in that system? Possibly. But one of the things in general that when you have a collective bargaining agreement in place, this is true outside of baseball, there is a requirement that management shares some financial information. So I think it basically is kind of a moot point because they already have stuff now. You wouldn't give away something that you think is really valuable just to get more access to the books.
All right, Evan. So I've got two for you here on this one. I'll start with the money side of a quote cap. We have a soft cap right now. It's called a luxury tax number. Not that many teams go over it, and there's different layers of it. Don't we feel like it's already serving a pretty strong purpose? And is that why you're saying it's not going to be worth the fight? It's one thing if it's like we have this clear cut 15 plus teams just are spending 400 million and 15 other teams are spending 50. Like, yes, there's definitely a disparity. And there are a few teams that are soaring past the rest. But I mean, most of the teams really think about it. They talk about it. I know what the number is. And if anything, I was just surprised that the number didn't increase commensurate with the revenue and inflation last time around in the CBA as much as it probably should have.
Yeah, look, people do talk about the luxury tax as a soft cap. I think in reality, it's probably a bit exaggerated in so much as, you still have the Dodgers who, according to cost contracts I looked up last night, are $334 million, something like that. With their luxury tax payroll, you have the ability for Steve Cohen, for Mark Walter to still do what George Steinbrenner did back in the day. And that's to go out and spend as they see fit. And in a hard cap system, that's gone, right? There's no wiggle room where you're going to be going above it and irking your other owners because you're spending more than them. So, yeah, the luxury tax system does, in practice, become kind of a line of demarcation. It is still a different thing.
All right, so one more for you on the books. what happens when a lot of teams are now becoming real estate deals and you own so much around it, but that doesn't have to count and can be a separate business, but clearly they're all tied together? Are they really going to be able to know everything that an owner owns and how they're profiting off of it? Restaurants, hotels, etc. It seems pretty complicated. I think that's one of the biggest battles, is that baseball's business has changed. There's so much volume that you can build a whole town around it, which is great often for the communities. But I just don't see how that money is going to be shared in a cap system.
No, Scotty, that's a good question. One of the things that gets argued about in the other leagues that have caps, and would be argued about in baseball if they had one, is what are you including in the revenues? That is a common argument. How do you count it? In baseball, I imagine the owners would say our real estate developments that, yes, are reasonably somewhat dependent on your ballpark and the success of your team, are not part of that. Obviously another thing wouldn't be part of that is franchise sales. You'd be splitting, let's say, 50% of the year-to-year revenue, but when it comes time to sell the thing, that money's not reflected. So you're touching on something that is important. What is counted in the revenue sharing? And there are often disputes about that in the other leagues. What
about the floor? Because a lot of these teams that are asking for the cap, it's like, well, it's not fair because these teams that don't spend, or we don't have money to spend. The A's have, whatever they are, Sacramento A's, have a $60 million payroll. If they go up to 180, if that's the floor is 150, are we going to see teams, we gotta shut the doors because we can't afford to pay the floor? And if that's not the case, then why aren't they paying it now? Because they don't have to, or because they don't want to?
Yeah, I asked Rob Manfred about a cap back in early 2023, start of spring training, right when I found out about this economic reform committee and was reporting on it. And the point he made then was, I don't even know that I can get to a cap today, because you got to find a number that the small markets agree on for a floor. And that is part of the battle. Can you get them up to 150 to 180? Can you reward them in other ways such that they are willing to meet that spend amount? I think one of the things that gets interesting there is, yes, you would now be forcing some of these small market teams to spend more. But it's not really realistic to think that any of them would start to behave the way the other teams do, the other big market teams do, right? Like, the Pirates are still going to be the Pirates. They're going to spend toward the floor of whatever that floor is. And, the Yankees and the Dodgers and the Red Sox and the Mets will spend up to the maximum. And so what becomes important is, well, how big is that band? How much wiggle room is there between the smallest and the largest? So yes, the setting of the floor is not a trivial thing.
Yeah, and if I'm a big market team, I hate this, because I'm like, cool, we're just going to bring ourselves down so that we can make it more competitive. No? You think because the owners want to bring salaries down and that's more important?
Yeah, you would. I used to have that feeling too, that you're losing your competitive advantage, which I think to some degree, in an overall sense, is true. That there's a value in baseball to the narrative around the Mets being the spenders and the Dodgers being the spenders and the Yankees being the spenders. But from a pure dollars and cents standpoint, whoa boy, would those big market teams make a lot more money in a cap system. If you don't have to go out and pay Juan Soto $765 million, and you can get him for, I don't know, whatever. If the limit on a contract is 5 years, that's a lot less money you have to commit to get the star player. So in the long run, these big market teams would do quite well.
Right. You can become much more of a profit machine. There you go. What, top five? You got one?
I just want to finish. It's a great article, Evan. I think you do a fantastic job. When I hear small markets, they don't spend, these big markets spend, they can spend. It bothers me to God's end. There's I'm a small market team, I can't spend. You got the money, man. I don't understand why these small market teams always come out and say, we don't have a chance at Juan Soto. Everybody does. Like, you do. You got the money to spend. You're just making up an excuse. In my opinion, it just drives me out the roof.
If you couldn't tell, Evan, Todd played for the Pirates once, so he experienced this firsthand.
It's not, and I'm not saying I should have made the money either. I'm just saying for others. Let's get that out of the way.
No, Todd, you deserve every payday you got. Look, the books are not open, and so when owners say we cannot afford this, or I can't afford to go out get this guy, we are taking them at their word. And it's one of the age-old fights. It's, well, the small markets can't compete. Prove it. What is true, whether or not it is reasonable that they say that, the reality is they don't go out and spend it. And that is a fact of life. But then the conversation turns to, well, in a cap system, are they going to behave differently? And that's kind of what I was getting at before. They would probably spend to the floor, or maybe a little above it. But if all of a sudden the idea is that everybody's going to really be on this even playing field, that's just not reality. And unless the cap and the floor were so close together. So there's a lot of stories to be done in the future here on how caps work and the different elements of it, the different arguments about it. I was really trying to stay away from that today because it is so intricate. There are so many effects to go through.
There'll be a stoppage before that happens. There's not the players will never let that happen.
Also, for a floor, you would see teams take on crappy contracts from the bigger market teams so they can, spend it on other guys, and they would get prospects out of it. It would be super fun. The one thing I don't care about is NBA salary capness is not fun to follow. So I hope we don't have that. Evan, thank you for the time. Obviously, there's plenty for people to dive into, and happy holidays, man. You survived the streets. Nobody came to video bomb this thing.
We only had one guy tell me to move, and we only had one set of leaves falling on my head, so I think it's a victory. Thanks, guys.
Exclusive news. Dodgers could make history with potential MLB star trade. Hello, baseball fans and Los Angeles Dodgers supporters. Today, we have breaking news that could shake up the MLB landscape and, possibly, bring even more star power to the Dodgers lineup. Stick around until the end, because this is the kind of story every fan will be talking about. Before we dive into the main details, let's take a moment to reflect on how active the Dodgers have been in pursuing top-tier reinforcements to stay competitive at the highest level. Over recent seasons, the team hasn't just established itself as a powerhouse, but has also shown its ability to pull off impactful deals. And now, it seems like a new opportunity is on the horizon, potentially bringing one of the game's most electrifying players to Los Angeles. Now imagine this, a 27-year-old outfielder with blazing speed, one of the league's top hitters, and a showman who knows how to electrify a crowd. That's right, fans, we're talking about Ronald ACUñA Jr. of the Atlanta Braves. According to reports from ESPN and CBS Sports, ACUñA is feeling betrayed by the Braves front office. And the reason? Broken promises. ACUñA was reportedly assured that the team would make significant moves to contend for another World Series title and give him the spotlight as the franchise's biggest star. However, none of those promises have materialized, and the player is said to be seriously considering an exit, with a new destination potentially decided as early as January. And this is where the Dodgers come into the picture. Recent reports suggest that Los Angeles is already in talks with Atlanta for a blockbuster trade. The proposed deal could include big names like catcher Will Smith and pitcher Bobby Miller, along with top prospects Diego Cartaya and Dalton Rushing. To sweeten the deal, financial compensation and draft picks are also on the table. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you think the Dodgers should take this bold step to bring in Ronald ACUñA Jr. and build one of the most formidable teams in MLB history? Drop your thoughts in the comments, share your take, and join the conversation with other fans. And of course, don't forget to like this video, share it on your social media, and subscribe to the channel. That way, you'll always stay updated with the latest Dodgers news and analysis. Let's root for the best outcome for the team together.